Good morning and welcome to Daily Cyber Briefing for Tuesday, the 18th of March. I'm Stephen Ridgway. I don't even remember who I am half the time. Right, excuse me, here we go. There is a vulnerability in Apache Tomcat that is now actively being exploited in the wild. It is tracked as CVE 2025 24813. It was announced on March the 10th, so just over a week ago, with updates. However, within a day or so of the announcement of the vulnerability, there were exploits out there. It is in the realm of vulnerabilities, this one is pretty trivial to exploit, and this allows remote code execution and access to sensitive files on the web server. Basically, the attacker needs to send a put request to upload a malicious session file to the server, and then using some stuff which people who know what they're doing would find very easy, that can be used to exploit this particular vulnerability. So the Flaw is present in versions 11, 10, and 9, possibly others as well. Updates are available, so if you are using Apache Tomcat on your servers and you have not updated to address this vulnerability, you are at a significant risk of attack. There is a use after free vulnerability in the Linux kernel, CVE 2024 36904. As with all kernel vulnerabilities, not the simplest thing to exploit, however, pretty serious if it does get exploited. There are patched kernel versions available. It has been fixed by Red Hat Enterprise on kernel version 5.14 long string of numbers, as of the middle of last year. However, a lot of kernels have not been updated, and there is now much more information about how to exploit this. So if you are worried about these sorts of things, just double check. It's a vulnerability located in the TCP subsystem, and it is to do with a time weight socket being introduced into the hash table before setting its reference counter. So basically, it's just got stuff in the wrong order, effectively. It is worth making sure you keep up to date with kernel vulnerabilities. I know people roll their eyes and groan, who would ever exploit a kernel vulnerability? Well, unsurprisingly, actually, there are plenty of people that would be quite happy to exploit kernel vulnerabilities. Equally, there is it's quite difficult to address kernel vulnerabilities, liable to break things because of blah, 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 blah. Well, yeah, and that is true. I mean, in order to make changes to the kernel, reboots might be required, and you do need to do a modicum of stand-up testing just to make sure that any patches or any other changes that may get rolled in as part of the kernel, that kernel patch, don't break things. But the alternative is sitting there with an exploitable kernel, which is a particularly bad thing. So strong recommendation there. Check to make sure that your particular distribution has addressed this vulnerability, because it is relatively straightforward to exploit if you know what you're doing. And then finally from me today, this one actually found this article. It was almost in a backwater of the cyber press doesn't seem to have really properly hit the news yet, but it is deeply disturbing. There is a common flaw in the implementation of RSA encryption across millions of IoT devices. So it's not a vulnerability in RSA algorithm per se. However, if you are generating the keys using a flawed random number generator, it is possible that two keys can share a prime factor. Okay, now if that's the case, it is possible then to break the encryption. The mathematics behind it is given in the article. I'm not a mathematician. I'm not even going to try and read out the formula that would that could be used. However, if you can find a common prime denominator for two encryption keys, then it is possible to break that encryption. So, research has been undertaken that has looked at 75 million RSA certificates and found that over 400,000 of them could be compromised by what's considered a relatively simple mathematical technique if you happen to be a cryptographer. So the majority of those, somewhat over half of them, were certificates linked to IoT devices by a particular manufacturer. Don't name the manufacturer in the article, but I think that it is it is something where you are at the mercy of the manufacturers anyway for most of these things. There is probably no way that you're going to be able to change the certificates on an IoT device, or certainly not with any ease. So what does this show us? Well, firstly, it shows us if you're coding up this stuff, make sure that you're careful when you're coding encryption. Just downloading some libraries and assuming that everything will be fine as you're building your apps with encryption in them is probably not good enough. Equally, though, if you are a user of devices with these that are secured by these sorts of things, all you can really do is just keep on top of the news and then apply pressure to your particular vendor if it appears that vulnerabilities are being found in this. So, as I said, this isn't a vulnerability in RSA per se. It is a vulnerability in the way that it's implemented, which just goes to show that using a good algorithm badly will not provide you with the security that you thought you had. Tricky one from a user perspective to work with, but interesting and worth keeping an eye on. Right, that's all from me for today. I hope you have a good Tuesday, and I will speak to you all again tomorrow morning.